Ladies and gentlemen, we are all here to understand the current food industry scenario, to understand it on the level of distribution, manufacturing, and production. So we are all here for a great purpose, to understand things better, to get more awareness. So I want you all to please be very attentive. I would like to say thanks to all of you for coming forward and becoming a part of this wonderful event. So without any further delay, I would like to call up the first speaker. We have Mr. Harish Vijor, Global Brand Guru and Founder, Harish Vijor Consult INC. Can we have Mr. Harish Vijor on stage? So I would like to tell you all something about Mr. Harish Vijor. Harish Vijor is a brand thinker and practitioner operating out of Bangalore, India. He runs a unique boutique consulting outfit branded Harish Vijor Consult INC, and a brand that has a consulting presence across the market of Hong Kong, Seattle, London, Istanbul, Dubai, and Indian subcontinent. We welcome you here, sir. How are you feeling?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you.
Are you excited?
Well, I guess as excited as one can be during COVID-19.
Great, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on board today.
Hi, a very good afternoon to each one of you. And I would like to kick off this inaugural keynote address at the virtual food show. Now, the fact is that, hey, listen, guys, these are tough times. And during tough times, what typically happens is we have to reinvent ourselves. And therefore, one of the important things that I have done in this reinvention process is I have decided never to use a PowerPoint presentation on my webinars or on my talks. So extremely important for me to convey that I've done something rustic, which is I've taken a razor and I've taken a kind of a post-it pad and I made some banners for you so that you know exactly what is going on. So first of all, welcome to this keynote address. Now, a keynote address is meant to leave back thoughts, is meant to leave back munching points, which possibly you'll think about for the sector you and I are going to talk about today. And the sector that you and I are talking about is the food processing sector. I call this a stomach and bladder sector. It is a stomach and bladder sector, basically because it's about food and beverage. And guess what, guys? Food and beverage is a beautiful industry to be in. And if you're in the processing industry that relates to food and beverage, it is something which can never, ever go out of fashion. Why? Because early in the morning, maybe at about 8 o'clock, you have a breakfast. And by 1 o'clock, you're very hungry. And by evening, 7 o'clock, you're possibly once again hungry. A nation of 1.3 billion people, which is India, we do 3 meals a day, and some of us do 4 meals a day, sadly or happily. 3 meals into 1.3 billion people is equal to 3.9 billion meals. So India is a nation of 3.9 billion meals. This is food that we put into our stomachs. And of course, there is that item called a bladder. And into that bladder goes bladder fluid. And that bladder fluid could be milk, it could be water, it could be beer, it could be anything which is of a liquid orientation. And that's one of the reasons I call the entire food processing sector a stomach and bladder category for the country and for the world at large. Now, if you look at our food and beverage industry and our food processing industry, the data is all out there. In this brief keynote address, I'm not going to talk about data, but I have to set the background. And the background is that we are the 6th largest food and grocery market in the world. 6th largest. Out of the countries of 225 countries, we are number 6. So we must be happy. And we are number 6 because we have a large number of people and a lot of us love to eat. The second fact is that the food and grocery category in this country comprises 65% of all retail. All retail, if we are talking about, is about 800 billion US dollars. You can talk about food and grocery to be about 563 billion US dollars. So food and beverage is the largest industry as far as you and I are concerned. And therefore, if you're in the food processing industry, you are in the right place at the right point of time. And I think this is a sunrise industry. If you look at it, we are the largest producers and consumers and exporters of spices in the world. So every spice that you talk about has an Indian origin, which is very large. Cashew nut. I worked for the cashew board for a period of time. And at one point of time, I had suggested to them that they should call it India nut and not cashew nut, because India is the largest producer and processor and consumer of cashew nut as well. And therefore, if you really look at it, we are big in many ways. We are the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables in the world. Of course, a lot of it gets wasted. Numbers apart, I think, in this keynote address, I'm going to address one more fact. And the fact is that a lot of people are involved in the food and beverage industry. The beauty of it is that 1.3 billion people are involved in the food and beverage industry, because all of us have to eat those 3 times a day, creating those 3.9 billion meals. But apart from that, right at the bottom of the rung is the farmer. And the stakeholder number 1 in this food processing industry is the farmer. And are you, as a food processing person, thinking of the farmer? That's question 1. The second is the middleman. The middleman who goes to the farmer, takes the stuff out of the farmer and takes it upwards in the chain, adding value for himself and for the market by and large. You could be one of them. So you're stakeholder number 2. So you have to look after the middleman. And stakeholder number 3 is the manufacturer, who gets all the raw material in and actually manufactures. Stakeholder number 4 is the manufacturer who gets inputs of every kind, or the guy who actually gives inputs to the product. For instance, in the tea bag industry, there is a thing called a string. There's a guy who has the expertise in making that string. And that string is a high specialty string. And that specialty food string is a part of this manufacturing business. So he's the stakeholder number 4. There is a staple which goes into a tea bag, and that is yet another specialty item, and that guy is also a stakeholder. The stakeholder number 5, or the manufacturer number 2, is the guy who makes the machines. And I'm sure many of you out here in this forum today are machine makers. So you have to be taken care of. The transporter, who takes care of transporting this food and beverage item from the manufacturing facility to the point of consumption, he's yet another stakeholder. And the 7th guy is the middleman, or the guy who's the retailer. And the 8th person is the consumer. So this is a farm to fork business. There are many stakeholders in this business, and I'm sure all of you on this address today are one of these 6 sets of people that I'm talking about. So what are we talking about? Everybody in this industry is happy or unhappy. I suspect being unhappy is part of being a business person. And if you're a business person, you're unhappy. You're unhappy with your volumes, you're unhappy with your values, you're unhappy with the margins, you're unhappy with the fact that we have COVID-19, which is restricting much of our business activity. If you look at it, the money is in the business of food processing, but it's not in the business of food processing as usual, but it's in the business of food processing as unusual. Business unusual is what I'm talking about in this 20-minute keynote address to you. What is business unusual? Business unusual is you investing your time, your energy, your money, everything to rebuild and reboot the industry that you are in. You could be any of these six constituents or stakeholders. My view, my belief, you need to reinvent because COVID times are new times. There is an Amrit Manthan in our lives. Our lives are shaken up. Consumer lives are shaken up. Just like that, from the farmer to the folk, extremely important to reinvent. So, do you, as a persona in the food processing industry, believe in reinvention? Or are you that person who says, oh, business is like this only, and this is how it will continue? My appeal to people in the food processing industry is you have to think new. You have to think of really creating an Amrit Manthan for yourselves. And this Amrit Manthan needs to create havoc in your business. I have always believed there are three formats of business. There are three roles for every businessman. And you are a businessman. And for you, the role number one, which you have performed and fulfilled into good action, is the Brahma role. You create a business. Brahma, the creator. You, the creator, who created your food processing business across any of these six stakeholders. The second role of yours is to be the Vishnu. You have to preserve. You are the preserver. You have to preserve your business. And guess what? My dear friends, you're possibly doing very well preserving your business. Your Vishnu role, you're doing very well. But my dear friends, in COVID Kal, as I call this era we are going through, extremely critical for you to adopt and adapt the third role, the Maheshwara role. You have to create a business, the Brahma role. You have to nurture the business, the Vishnu role. And when push comes to shove, you need to actually destroy the business. And destroying the business is the Maheshwara role that each one of you in this fora, at this fora, have as a duty to perform. So my appeal to you in this keynote address is to request you to really relook at your business. You created it well. You're resting on the laurels of what you did in the past. You're nurturing it reasonably. And you're possibly troubled at this point of time as you're nurturing it. Is it time for you to destroy your model, to recreate from the ashes of this model the new business model ahead? And that is what I'm going to talk to you about in three thoughts. With that, I'm going to conclude this keynote presentation. I'm going to leave behind for you, as any keynote address is meant to leave back, three thoughts to munch. Three thoughts to munch. Point number one, a very strong point I feel is reduce export dependency. Ouch. Many of you will say, what are you talking about? The food processing industry gets its best value from the export market. In the export market is where you make the best of margins. And guess what? I have my footprint across 43 different consuming countries. You want me to reduce export dependency? I'll give you a logic why. My dear friends, if you really look back at the earth today, what is happening is self-sufficiency is becoming the norm. Self-dependency is becoming the norm. Within India, we have a call from our Prime Minister Modi ji to say Atma-Nirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India. Now, my dear friends, why am I asking you to reduce export dependency in the food processing sector? Fundamentally because Atmanirbhar Bharat can be for Bharat. Atmanirbhar United States of America, think of it. Hashtag Atmanirbhar USA. Hashtag Atmanirbhar United Kingdom. Hashtag Atmanirbhar Poland. Hashtag Atmanirbhar Germany. This is a sword that can cut both ways. Both ways. When you say Atmanirbhar for India, other countries can also talk about Atmanirbhar. And guess what suffers the most when any country adopts the Atmanirbhar plan for itself? What suffers the most is imports which are not very high value added. And guess what? The food and beverage exports of our country are not very high value added exports. Any country can create for itself a format of substituting the imports that you and I are talking about. This will not happen overnight. It'll take 20 years. But at this keynote address, my request to you is reduce export dependence. Every business of yours must have, even if you are a transporter or if you are a guy who's actually procuring from the farm, or you're a guy who's a manufacturer, or you're an exporter or a domestic player. Every one of you in the food processing business must have an avatar which is Desi as well. You cannot be 100% export oriented guy. You need to have a Desi avatar. So start building a yin and a yang. A yin and a yang is a figure like that. Have 10% Desi and 90% export, but grow that into occupying a larger portion of the Desi market, because Desinomics is going to be a theme of the future. That's point number one. The second I, these are things that I call the 3 I's. The first I is essentially going to be about this business of saying that this is an ideas business. The entire business of food processing is an ideas business. Better the idea, higher on the value chain do you sit. More inferior the idea, lower on the value chain you sit. So look for the higher value chain ideas. Food processing industry. I work in this industry. I've been working for the past 26 years in the food processing industry. If you look at it, in the beginning, I used to work with the lowest common denominator people who would really literally be at the realm of commodity export. As it goes, we have built higher value, higher value, higher value. And today, possibly, the work which is most exciting is at the highest end of value delivery. Can you send something out of India which costs X, and can you derive a value which is X plus 800%? 800 is nothing new. Give you an example. Many years ago, we decided that we're going to export an Indian handicraft product. So we went into the villages of India and I tried to look at what kind of product could we export. Everybody said we'll export this candle or this specialty fabric. I picked up a nasty thing. I picked up the great Indian jhadu, the jhadu. Because in India, the jhadu is made out of plant excess and the stems of plants. And what we did is we took the jhadu and we bought the jhadu from the jhadu maker, and then we took it and we did not export the jhadu in containers just as it was. We added value and value and value and value. This is a ridiculous example I'm giving you, but I'm giving it to you just to tell you that you have to add value and ideas. We took the jhadu and what we did was we suddenly had an idea. I said, why don't we put it under sandwich glass and make it into a display item. The great Indian jhadu. A small little booklet with it to say where the jhadu comes from, the origin, the ecosystem, the plant life, the people who live around it, the rural milieu. And guess what? The West loved the stories. And we actually exported the humble jhadu, which was, at the net of it, bought at 12 rupees per Indian jhadu, was exported at $280 per piece in a sandwich glass format. The net cost of that sandwich glass format would have been, if you're receiving $280, we actually produced the whole thing for only as much as 700 rupees. Let's talk about it as $10. A $10 jhadu going at $280. I'm very proud to tell you that as many as 86,500 houses in the United States of America have the humble jhadu showcased in their drawing rooms, in their best drawing rooms. Ridiculous example, but that's value addition. From $10 to $280, a 28x value addition, that's what you and I need to be looking at in the food processing industry. Do we get that? We don't. Are some people getting that? Yes. I can give you examples, but we don't have time. In fact, many of them are my client companies, and we are able to generate that in the new world. Point number 2. Let's really talk about the second point, which is to say the 3 I's that I'm talking about. The second I is really all about the fact that we are an impatient generation across the world. Impatience is the norm. Food processing is great for the impatient people out here. Many of us don't have the time to make our own breakfast. A poha takes as many as 11 different ingredients to make. But then who has the time? So we don't put 11 ingredients, we put 4 and we get the substandard poha. So what if there's that food processing guy who actually puts in those 11 traditional inputs and the poha tastes just as it used to taste in the old days? Some of the best multinational companies in the country are moving away from noodles alone to poha. So 2-minute poha, no, in this case it might be a 3-minute poha, coming from possibly Nestle. So Nestle is not only about Maggi, Nestle is going to be about Maggi noodles and maybe Maggi poha. Desinomics is going to be pretty useful. The third I, and that's the last one I want to present you with, is the I word, which is immunity. Immunity. What is immunity? This immunity word is very, very important today because people are saying, I need to have the immunity to withstand it all. The food processing industry has a fantastic role to look at immunity as a very important idea. So the last 3 C's that I presented to you, the 3 I's that I present to you, is first, it's an ideas business. Get new ideas for your business. Buy it off the shelf or get it for yourself and work on it and recreate your business. Create a Maheshwara role on your business. Destroy the existing model, create the new. The second I is you're catering to an impatient generation. Go with impatience-oriented products. And the third I is the immunity-boosting products that you and I talk about. The last point that I want to talk about is this fact that there's something called digitalism in our lives. Digitalism is the new religion in our lives. Everything you and I do is digital today. All of us are literally on WhatsApp. That's digital. All of us are on Facebook maybe. Many on Twitter. Many on Instagram. Very few on TikTok. Maybe on Metro. Maybe on Raposo. But all of us are digital animals. The new way of doing anything is digital. Food is the same. There's something called, I have created something called physical food, which you have created, and I have created something called digital food. A lot of us who cannot afford to eat all the processed foods because of hypertension, because of diabetes, today eat with your eyes. When you eat with your eyes, that's digital food. And guess what? There's money in digital food as well. Having said that, my dear friends, I conclude this special keynote address. It's been a pleasure being here. I know we may not have time for a Q&A, and therefore I'm going to leave back an email ID, which is harishbijur@hotmail.com, my personal ID. And if you say that you were at this virtual food show, I promise to reply to you within 24 hours. It's been a pleasure being here. Take care and all the best as you create the Maheshwara model in your business. Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was wonderful to hear you and I really liked it. I have to say that you put it really well. I really like the idea of those yellow stickers and all. It was really wonderful to hear you. Thank you so much.